Welcome back, guys, to the channel. Today we're going to be testing the TNT2 Ultra versus the Voodoo 3 2000. So it's going to be 3D effects versus NVIDIA Glide versus Direct3D. Here up the top here, we've got the Voodoo 3 2000 complete with 16 megabytes of RAM and the TNT2 Ultra 32 megabytes of RAM. This one here, the Voodoo 3, is clocked at 143 megahertz. And this one down here, the TNT2 Ultra, is clocked at 150 megahertz. Just to make things a bit more interesting, I'm going to throw in some other cards too and see how they fare with it too. So representing NVIDIA, we've got the TNT2 Vanta, and down here on the bottom, we've got the TNT2 M64. And representing 3D effects, we've got the legendary Voodoo 2. And down the bottom here, we've got the Voodoo Banshee. So here's a list of specs for all the cards. Okay, guys, so we've gone through the cards. Let's make a start. Welcome to Retro to RTX. So guys, this is the motherboard and the processor that we're going to be using. This one here, 128 megabytes of SD RAM, clocked at 100 megahertz. Processor itself is a Pentium II 400, typical of what you'd find in the 1998 sort of era. These cards are from 1998 to 1999. The Voodoo 3 and also the TNT2 Ultra were released in early 99. So it would be reasonable to expect that you still be running this sort of hardware coming into. We'll be using a CF card for our Windows 98 install and also running a CD-ROM so we can load our software in there. This processor is not overclocked at all. So we're going to be running stop speeds to see what sort of results we get from that. Anyway, specs are one thing. Let's see how it actually performs. So here are the scores for final reality. We've both got the Voodoo 3 and the TNT2 Ultra both scoring 4.5, showing a bit of CPU limitation of the Pentium II 400. Not far behind, we've got the Voodoo Banshee with its 8 megabytes with 4.31. Lowest shown on this chart is the Voodoo 2 with 4.11, and the Vanta is not much far in front with 4.14. And here we have 3D Mark 2000, 800 by 600 at 16-bit color. You can see the TNT2 is putting in a decent showing with all its variants, with the TNT2 Ultra up at 1488, and even the Vanta is not that much behind it, potentially showing some sort of CPU limitation there going on with the Pentium II 400. And we've also got the Voodoo 3 putting in a decent showing, but not quite keeping up with the Vanta. The Voodoo 2 is a fair way back on 1005, and the Voodoo Banshee, most likely due to its high clock speed, is a little bit higher in 1126. So here we are, 3D Mark 2000, 1024 by 768, 16-bit color. You can see the TNT2 Ultra is still hitting that CPU limit, provided by this Pentium II 400. The other TNT2 cards are starting to back off a little bit. However, the Voodoo 3 2000 is still putting a decent showing in with 1415 as the score. The fact that it's Direct3D is performing quite well. The Voodoo 2 can't display this resolution due to its frame buffer limits. However, the Voodoo Banshee is still putting it, we'll call it an appearance, not really much of a showing, really at 577. Obviously held back by the 8 megabyte that's on board. Even though the Vanta's only got 8 megabyte, it is still performing quite well. Ranger. So now we've got Quake 3, released at the end of 1999. This is the game that wanted to be played at the time. So we've got the TNT2 Ultra and we've got 42 frames, just slightly behind the Voodoo 3 on 45. We've also got Voodoo 2 that's showing 33 frames a second, putting in a decent showing, most likely due to its 2 TMU, so it's got that multi-texturing happening there. That's why the Voodoo Banshee, 13.8 frames isn't exactly going well with 1 TMU, even though it does have the slightly higher clock speed over the Voodoo 2. Looking down at the TNT2 Vanta, it's got 13.5 frames, no doubt limited by its 8 megabytes on board. Also, the 64-bit bus that's got for memory wouldn't be helping either. The M64, even though it has got that 64-bit bus, it also has 32 meg on board, so 35 frames is not bad going. Looking at 1024 by 768, we can see the TNT2 Ultra has nearly 42 frames, and the Voodoo 3 has nearly 40, perhaps hinting at some sort of CPU limit there. Also, the M64, 27 frames, still respectable. The Vanta, though, and the Banshee, pretty much unplayable, these frame rates, and obviously the Voodoo 2, limited by its frame buffer, is no longer playable at 1024 by 768, unless you have 2 from that famous SLI. Okay, so pushing up the resolution further to 1280 by 1024, the TNT2 Ultra is still holding its own at nearly 33 frames, where the Voodoo 3 has dropped down to 25. We've got the M64 virtually unplayable now at 13 frames a second. No doubt due to that 64-bit memory bus as a limitation. The Vanta, Voodoo 2 and Banshee now unplayable. Note to say, though, that the Vanta wanted to run. However, I didn't include it just because they had text artifacts, and it was virtually unplayable anyway, but the artifacts, I just didn't bother recording it and putting it in the benchmark. Moving ahead now, time wheel tournament, 800 by 600. So we can see that the TNT2 Ultra pushing 54 average frames, and that's what we're basing all going forward. So we've got 54 frames, and then we've also got the Voodoo 3 pushing 49. So it is a little bit behind, but still well and truly playable at these frame rates. Even the Voodoo 2 is putting a decent showing in at 42. The Voodoo Banshee, no deal held back by its lack of multi-texturing, having only 1 TMU, is only pushing 27. To note though, the Vanta is only doing 17, but it does max up to 45 frames, so there's something going on there, no doubt held back by its 8 megabytes of onboard RAM, but also the 64-bit bus that the Vanta is known for. The M64 putting in a decent showing though, with its 32 meg on board, 46 average frames, pushing up to a maximum of 67.1. Pushing up the resolution further again in Unreal Tournament to 1024 by 768. So we've got the Voodoo 2's dropped off, obviously due again to that frame buffer limitation. We've also got the Voodoo Banshee, not really playable now at 17 frames a second. The Voodoo 3 still playable with 37 frames a second, but the TNT2 Ultra leading the pack on 47. And even the M64 not that far behind on 35. At this point now, I wouldn't bother playing with the Vanta at 10.8 frames. Maxing Unreal Tournament out at 1280 by 1024. Basically, the only card left really playable is the TNT2 Ultra. Even the Voodoo 3's dropped off to 23 frames per second average. No doubt limited by its 16 megabytes of onboard RAM. We've got the TNT2 M64, even worse at 19. But the Ultra, with its 32 megabytes and its 128-bit bus, still holding on at 42. The Vanta, not playable at this stage, and neither is the Banshee, and obviously the Voodoo 2 was ruled out long ago. So wrapping up the benchmarks, you can really see the generational split between 3D effects and NVIDIA starting to show through here. The Voodoo 2 still holds its timing surprisingly well, especially when you start to lean into the SLI and using glide totals, but it starts to fall behind hard once you start stepping outside that ecosystem. The Voodoo Banshee 8MB is a bit of a middle child. It's got the 2D3D combo, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have the raw punch of dedicated cards like the Voodoo 3 2000. And that Voodoo 3 really starts to shine and glide in early OpenGL, staying smooth and consistent where the older cards start to struggle. On the NVIDIA side, you've got the TNT2 Ultra flexing its muscle in Direct3D, putting ahead in higher resolutions and more complex scenes. The TNT2 M64 32MB and the Vanta 8MB, though, are clearly cut down budget parts. Even though the M64 does do okay, the Vanta really does show that it is a budget part. They get the job done, but you feel the bandwidth limitations fast. Overall, it's a classic late 90s GPU battle, Glide Magic versus Direct3D evolution. So that was Retro to RTX. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.